I'm here to talk about something that may apparently sound a little boring, but hopefully you'll see the aspects of using AI in lending that that perhaps was not evident is not evident to the outside world. Um, a little bit about me. So I recently joined L&T Finance as Kaido, not the Japanese manga, monster Kaido. It stands for Chief AI and Data Officer. What I am here to talk to you about is how we are making a change in the business of lending in India. Almost every one of you in Bangalore are probably very familiar with this scene, right? The dirty secret of e-commerce in India is that it rides on the back of these guys riding this little two-wheelers. Each of them costs about 2 lakhs, sometimes more, sometimes less. And if you think about a typical loan of 15% interest rate, then that comes to about 7,000 rupees of EMI a month. Now, if you think of that in the context of these gig economy workers making only about 15,000 a month, that's a fair chunk. And if you look at their bank accounts, and we have, as part of this thing, we'll go over that, they only about have 10% of that they can fork over as down payment. So when they go to a traditional lender, they get rejected a lot and get bad offers a lot because of the lack of their credit history. A lot of them, this is the first time ever that they need to borrow money for anything. And because of gig economy, irregular income, right? Sometimes they make money, sometimes they don't. And a lot of these are young folks, so not a very long employment history. And oh, by the way, all of the traditional bureaucratic documents, a lot of them can't furnish as proofs to prove that they are credit worthy. So what happens? They end up making them an offer that they can't accept. Either the EMI is too high or the down payment is too high. And we have been seeing this in our own books as well. We are one of the big two-wheeler lenders in the country. More than 1/3 of customers, 36%, come without a credit history. And so with the traditional credit signals, we end up making them offers that almost half of them don't take. So that's a lose-lose scenario, right? So how are we planning to fix this? We look not just at credit data, but we are looking at a whole universe of data for them. We are looking into their bank statements with, of course, their consent, and we are looking at UPI transactions, how much people are paying them, how much they are paying, on what aspects are they using that money, and so on and so forth. Where do they live? Do they come from a very fraud-prone area or not? And we have been in this business for long enough that we have a lot of historical data with which we can build machine learning models, whether other lookalike performance becomes the target variable for building individual models for data sources of this type. Credit bureau models, banking models, payment aggregator models, and finally, we are using a source of data that classifies all of India into 200-meter grids and classifies them in terms of the affordability and fraud indexes there. And from there, we then do some probability ensembling. And we do this in 2 different ways, one for people who happen to have a credit history and ones for whom, like it mentioned, don't have them. That results in a model that is far better and far sharper in distinguishing between people who are truly worthy of getting of our loans and those who are not. So how does this typically work? So imagine a bike purchaser walking into a showroom and they take their pick of which bike they want to buy. And then they come to our desk and look for financing. Now, when they do that, we use this AI engine at the back that we call Cyclops, one with the big eye looking at everything, that then pulls the bureau data, the banking details, the payment details, their geographical location scores, and so on and so forth, using various different kinds of APIs. These APIs can be a API hitting a traditional credit bureau, a CIC is what we call them, or it can hit a payment aggregator who aggregates all of these UPI and other payment information, or it can hit an API to their bank or their banking aggregator, and also it can hit that API that I mentioned from the lat long of their home address to where they are. We bring all these, score those models that I mentioned how we trained, and voila, hopefully, if the guy is good enough, then they'll ride into the sunset, riding the bike of their choice. Now, how does it look like from an user's perspective, a borrower's perspective? So we actually sent a group of MBA students from Shiv Nadar University out to the field to actually talk to these customers and understand that. And they came up with a terribly tiny tale. Steve Jobs used to say that a sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. In a country like India, with so much poverty and so much desperation and so little trust, what the users feel here, because they don't see all of these data exchanges and model scoring happening underneath, what they feel here is that we trust them, that yes, they can actually take the bike and pay us back. So in an environment where trust is in such short supply, trust is human, trust is beautiful, and trust is magic. I told you how we are using these data sources today in order to build Cyclops. We're not going to stop there. We are methodically looking at a whole host of external data sources that we can bring in and sharpen this model over every single generation and get it better and better and better. And we are also not going to stop just at two-wheelers. We are going to do this for urban India, for rural India, for tractors, for personal loans, maybe one day even for your mortgage. We are going to look at things like satellite images. We're going to look at data from our own apps. We're going to look at device details. We're going to look at digital profiles, employment profiles, publicly available court records, and a whole host of other things. Now, one may ask that all this data does cost, right? This data acquisition cost, storing, processing, everything. So does it really make sense from a business perspective? So for that, we came up with our own KPI called return on data investment. In a nutshell, think of it as if you spent 1 rupee to acquire a certain amount of data for a particular group of customers, then how many rupees are you saving in terms of the credit losses that you would otherwise incur? And one of the ways you can do that, this being a little bit of a technical audience, the methodology is down there. So basically, think of it as from a post-priority perspective, given that data, how much are your delinquency rates, and how much were they if that data wasn't there, and then it's a straight-through calculation in terms of the average loan size and the money at risk and so on and so forth. So we did this analysis for the two-wheeler business for the data sources that we mentioned. And of course, this is going to differ from model to model, from application to application, from geography to geography, from data source to data source. But here's a curious pattern that we found. If you look at the more traditional established sources of trust, like a bureau score like CIBIL, and you look at the RODI, the return on investment from there, versus the return that you're getting from less traditional sources like geographical profiling, like payment segregator models, and so on and so forth, turns out these alternative sources of data actually have higher RODI. So there's a lot more of value out there, and that's why we're bullish about using more and more sources of alternative data to sharpen the way we deliver credit to all Indians. Now, I talked about data so far in the sense of numbers in a column, right? Structured data. But what about unstructured data? After all, there's far more unstructured data out there in the world than there is structured data. What do we do with that? Do we do anything? So for that story, let me take you to a very different corner of India. In rural India, there is a sector of business called microfinance. Originally originated with Muhammad Yunus, now Bangladesh's chief economist, chief advisor, called Grameen Bank. The concept is that a group of rural ladies come together, form joint liability groups, and then they get, even though they're poor and they do not have, again, traditional sources of income, you give them very small loan amounts, typical being about 40,000 rupees, and they are surprisingly able to pay a lot of it back. Today, this has taken flight in India in volume. There are 70 million plus borrowers, active borrowers of rural loans, of rural microfinance loans. There are 224 lenders out there, 223 other than us. And there's about 4 lakh crores worth of outstanding loans in this segment. Serves a lot of need at the bottom of the pyramid, from women's empowerment to economic development in rural areas, and so on and so forth. We do our part in it. We're active in 16 states in microfinance. We have, over our existence, touched the lives of 1.3 crore women with microfinance loans. Now, the way these loans work, it's a very high-touch business where you're trying to understand the patterns of creditability and other things about rural women for whom traditional data sources and traditional signals don't exist. A lot of them are not digitally connected. A lot of them don't have smartphones. So how do you make sense of whether somebody would be able to pay this loan back or not beyond the very basic base? So we identified an interesting source of opportunity there. So we can actually use a source of image we can actually use an image source that is almost always used in every loan, every banking transaction, or not a banking transaction, but every banking account opening that you ever do. Anybody want to guess what such an image may be? Well, you don't actually take a satellite image of your house every time you want to open an account, right? But you still have to provide a picture. Yeah, so KYC photos. So now, how do we use KYC photos? So if you think again about the rural scenario, it's a high-touch business. So what happens is, when a rural woman applies for a loan, typically we send one of our field level officers to go to that village, to go in front of the home of that specific applicant, and then take a picture of them in front of her house, and sometimes even take a picture in the inside of the house. Now, these images are not only capturing the applicant. The interesting part of this, the bycatch of this, is that you also get to see the type of house in front of which she is standing. Now we take these images, we put them through a multimodal LLM, and then we prompt it to give us what signals of what is it that is in that image that the LLM sees. We don't just stop there. We, again, have a lot of historical data, and we have a lot of level data as well, from which we can actually score the level of, let us say, affluence that is evident from the signals that you can see from the picture of that image. And then we put a multi-shot learning prompt where we give a lot of these labeled examples in the prompt and ask it to score a number that we call lifestyle index, by the way, copyrighted by L&T Finance by now. And by the way, this method itself, we have filed a patent, so fair warning. So anyway, so we get that score. And then that score now gives an objective measure of creditability that we simply did not have before. So that is one use of unstructured data. But again, we're not just we're not just going to stop there. Then we started thinking, where else are data sources that we can use? Turns out that when somebody asks for a loan, for a lot of the applicants, we actually do a video verification, where our agent makes a video call to the mobile phone of the applicant. And they usually ask questions like, oh, where do you live, how much do you earn, and those kind of normal questions. But it's not the questions that is interesting here. You see, in a frame like that, you get to see things like, oh, he's in a room that has some furnitures out there. You can see a fridge. You can see some, ceiling walls. You can ceiling fans. You can see some, clean walls and those kind of things. And again, text that you see, it is generated from a multimodal LLM with the right kind of prompts. Compare that to what may turn out from another similar video call, but this time from an applicant who may have a far more modest circumstances. And there, you will get different signals. The signals will tell you that, oh, this is probably a kind of a low-end kirana shop with some, corrugated asbestos roof or something like that. And again, from these, we can generate lifestyle signals that we can use to further enhance the sharpness of the model of how do we want to proceed with this applicant. So the previous one was external images of the house. This is internal images of the house. So this one we call the internal lifestyle index. And not just that. Somebody mentioned satellite images. We are beginning to do that as well. So we know the home location of the applicant. To put it on the form, right? So you can then look at how does that house look like in the context of the neighborhood from Google Earth photos. And again, you can push it through similar kinds of multimodal LLMs with the right kind of prompts. And for example, this picture, it looks like a multi-storied apartment building that is in a relatively structured, well-planned area. So yeah, probably this is the home of somebody who could afford a decent apartment. Compared to that, pictures like this, the LM can actually identify, yeah, this kind of looks like a slum. That picture, by the way, is from Dharavi, the biggest slum in the world. So again, satellite images just based on a user's home location gives pretty good idea about whether somebody would be a reliable versus an unreliable borrower when it comes to paying their EMIs on time. We talked about images. That's not the only source of unstructured data. Another avenue that we are actively looking at is psychometric indexes. So we talked about rural women, and also we are looking at a few other microfinance type opportunities and farm type opportunities, where we are coming up with a series of questionnaires that are designed in a way where there is no obvious right or wrong answer. Things like how do you manage your budgeting? What do you think of somebody who is constantly looking at new business opportunities and so on and so forth? And from the answers to these, we can score a multi-vector approach towards a psychometric profile of an individual. How conscious are they? What is their level of morality? What is their how much obligation do they feel towards somebody they borrowed money from? How do they approach decision making? A whole host of other things. Beginning stages, eventually these will also come into psychometric lifestyle indexes. Now, I talked about a lot of things without using the word GenAI, right? So what about GenAI? GenAI has gone through its hype cycle, right? And now there's an anti-hype cycle going on. So here's the way we are looking at it. We are using a prompted LLM, which is a generative AI, to generate actually an output score, right? But is that the final solution? It's still just a score. It still does not give me an actual suggestion, an actual actionable suggestion. What do I want to do with that application? For that, I need to go further. I need to take that score and I need to build a model just like those Cyclops models that will actually give me an indication of the probability of default of a particular applicant. So what do you see here? You see that GenAI is just a tool. It's not the complete solution. It is something that can be a complete solution, a very powerful solution, when you pair it up with more traditional machine learning models. So that is how I see the more interesting enterprise values that go beyond just chatbots and other things that people are talking about, of where GenAI is going to take AI ML. The future is that GenAI is going to be everywhere, but it's not going to be by itself. GenAI combined with other traditional AI ML is where the value lies. Now, how are we going about and bringing this concept of having GenAI everywhere in the context of L&T Finance? So the approach we are taking is as follows. We have taken a top-down approach where I actually held an AI bootcamp for all of the executives in the company. And we methodically explored use cases and came up with a roadmap that my team is executing. But we're not stopping there. We're also enabling the broader knowledge workers in the company to go and use GenAI tools themselves and then come up with interesting use cases on, oh, I did this and figured out how to read this legal contract in like a fraction of a second, right? And then we bring out the champions of such use cases. We will bring out the champions of such use cases and then convert the best ideas into applications that then go back to everyone. And of course, we don't want to be selfish and keep all these ideas and all these insights and all these learnings to ourselves. We are outreaching to the broader AI community in the world and in India specifically. And we are going to hold an AI conference in which we are going to declare an L&T Finance AI challenge. That will happen November 26th in Mumbai. It will be an invite-only conference, but and this is the first time we are telling this to the rest of the world, if you want to express your interest, scan that QR code, and it will take you to a Google form in which you can put in your details, and if it is if you'd like you to so we would like you to express interest, and we would when we start opening up the registration, we will include you all. So that's all I had to talk about. So I've about